Well, hey there, everybody. How are you doing? It's Nate. Thank you for joining me. This is a special training dedicated to the amazing and wonderful hospice volunteers that I get to work with on a regular basis. One of our training modules that we look at is to look at personal and professional boundaries. So this is going to be a Brookdale Hospice presentation, but I think it'll help anybody who's looking to improve their serve, improve their game, improve the way that we reach out and help other people. In order to help other people, we have to make sure that we ourselves are helping ourselves well and maintaining those all-important boundaries. So I hope you enjoy this time together. We're going to take a look at this presentation on personal and professional boundaries. So personal and professional boundaries, balancing human connection with personal practice. From the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, from the Buddhist tradition, it reads, "May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore." So as I shared earlier, the goal is to define professional boundaries, understand a little bit about how they're different than maybe just personal social interactions that we would have with other people. We want to discuss factors that contribute to unhealthy relationships, as well as identify practices to keep and maintain healthy boundaries. So a personal relationship is usually one that we choose. We choose our friends, we choose the people at work that we hang out with afterwards, we hang out and talk to our neighbors at a certain level of connection and experience, but usually it's unpaid, it's spontaneous, and very mutual. This is not just talking to your boss about a raise. This is hanging out with your colleague on your work team for a bowl of chicken wings and maybe having a drink after work sometime. But a professional relationship, it's obviously purposeful. It's got usually revolving around a task or an organization or a mission. It's got a framework for care. You see, the framework helps us see where the lanes begin and end. It's paid. It's based on knowledge, skill, and a certain objective to it. So specifically in hospice care, we have certain rules about how we expect our paid and volunteer staff to interact with patients and families. We expect that there will be physical and emotional limits. We also expect that we will put safeguards to ourselves and put safeguards around our interactions with our patients and families so that the utmost professionalism and the utmost care and respect will be given at all times. So obviously working with folks who are at the end of life is very challenging. I know, as I would be out and about all the time seeing people as a hospice chaplain going from person to person to person, I would have to take time to unplug, to disconnect, to recharge my batteries, whether it was listening to a sports radio. I would pull into the parking lot of a local grocery store for lunch. I'd turn on the sports talk show. I'd eat my sandwich. I'd wonder if the Broncos were ever going to get their act together, and it just even a little 30-minute break would help me recharge and be ready to jump into my next visit. I would try as best as I could not to bring the worries and the frustrations from home life or work life to the encounters I would have with the patients and families, because when a boundary is violated, the last bullet point you can see is that it can create unrealistic expectations. We really foster an unhealthy dependence upon ourselves or the team when we don't maintain boundaries. So when we lack boundaries or we fail to maintain the clear guidelines, like the yellow double line, yellow stripe down the middle of the road gives us a clear boundary that says do not cross that or else you're going to be going into incoming traffic. When we blur the lines and blur the relationship, we realize that the patient or the family or the team can become very compromised. A patient or a family behavior or request that's inappropriate doesn't get stopped. A team member's behavior, request, or involvement, or the way they treat us, if we don't maintain a healthy boundary, we can end up getting treated inappropriately, or we can treat someone else inappropriately. as well as just there's unrecognized and potential harm that just sometimes lies underneath the surface. It's just the unseen, unknown, just blur that doesn't really have an effect until maybe you hit a bump in the road or something else comes up. We work with people who are at a very vulnerable place. Most of our families that we work with, most of these individuals, they're not used to this. They're not used to being in the dying process. Usually we only get one shot at this dying process for ourselves. And so if I am feeling especially unnerved and vulnerable and not feeling well, I could, potentially run the risk of opening up that door for someone to treat me very inappropriately, or someone who does not have a healthy boundary could see me as being vulnerable and take advantage of that opportunity. Sometimes our interactions with people can be very raw and emotional. That's the very special part about hospice work, is I love it so much that we just dive right into people's lives, and sometimes we just get in there with all the mess. So even as a volunteer, you will receive and have an opportunity to be involved in very personal, intimate encounters. So keeping our volunteers in line, in the double yellow line, not crossing that, is so important. We have to realize that who these people are, who we are, and how we come together is part of this boundary exploration. We need to realize that the way we were raised, as well as the way a person or a family is raised, or their viewpoints, or our viewpoints, and there may not be a very easy way to navigate those. But the more understanding we have, the more awareness we have about the family of origin or our family of origin, it can help us find those connecting points. So we think of this as a zone of helpfulness. Being engaged, being caring, being curious, being compassionate is very engaged, is very helpful. There's a zone, though, that is where the sweet spot is. If I am too distant, if I am too far away, then I may not be able to really connect with this person and really help. But if I am too close to the person in their life, then I'm also running the risk of endangering them and crossing significant boundary lines and not being helpful. I'm out of the zone. I'm out of the sweet spot. And if I'm constantly going too far, allowing myself to be too involved, too much going to this one person or this one family or this one situation, to the point where it seems like it's all I can eat, breathe, think, sleep on, dream about, then that should be a warning sign. That should be a red flag dinging right above our ears to warn us that we're on the verge of this compassion fatigue, which is a true condition where you're just fatigued under emotional distress because you constantly are paying attention to and constantly impacted by the demands of other people. So all of us as team members, we can obviously fall into this trap. It's not unusual to catch myself treating someone maybe, and just starting to treat someone or just starting to think about someone in a way that maybe not be in that zone of helpfulness. And so oftentimes it's because I think I know best. Nate knows best. Mother knows best. Mighty Mouse is here to save the day. Superman, Wonder Woman, The Incredibles, whoever you see yourself as. Sometimes we get a false sense of how important I am in this person's life, and my inexperience or my most generous experience sometimes can harm and get in the way if I'm not careful, because I can fall into the trap of I know what's best for this person. I know how to come in and save the day. And the way this works psychologically is there's two terms that you may or may not be familiar with. The first one is transference. You may have heard someone that says to you, "Oh, you remind me just like my grandson," or "You remind me of my best friend Sally," or "my sister Susie." When someone says that to you, they are transferring their past onto you in the present moment. They see you and treat you like someone else that they have in their mind's eye, right back here in their brain, they're recalling a certain person in a certain time in a certain place. And just because you wore a red shirt or just because you had blue eyeliner on, they're seeing you as that person in their past, and they begin to treat you like that person. And then the other side of the coin is countertransference. When you see the person you're working with, it could be a coworker, it could be a patient, a family member, it could be the nurse on the unit that kind of stands guard over the patients that you're trying to see. And because you see that person in a certain light, you start to transfer your emotions back onto that person. Typically, you're responding to someone in a level of authority. The patient reminds you of your grandmother. They remind you of that hated neighbor who always yelled at you as a kid to get off my lawn. And so now you treat that person or harbor a bit of bitterness, and for some reason you may not even realize that when you pull into the parking lot, you start to have these feelings of anger and dread, and it's like, where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? Well, that could be countertransference. You could be having that triggered in your own life. Obviously, another way that we need a very important piece of keeping healthy professional boundaries is to understand the differences in our values. We already mentioned this a little bit, but cultural, social, religious, economic parts of the country, they're all so different. So we have to really pay attention to how I treat this person and be sure I'm not blurring boundaries and treating them just because I think I should treat them this way, or I think they should have a good death, meaning take morphine, when maybe the patient and the family and their culture says, not on your life will I ever take morphine. Here are some examples. You can read these examples of boundary concerns. Overly talking about yourself. I believe that you can in a healthy way talk about your own life and really connect to somebody. You can maybe be too emotional. I do believe in sharing emotion. I do believe that it's okay that if a story sparks a little tear in your eye, it's okay to let the tear fly. And if you are filled with joy because this person said something funny, please laugh and enjoy a good laugh with them. Sometimes we blur the boundary lines again because we start to believe I'm the only team member that really understands this person. I'm the only person that can really be there. So I'm going to start visiting outside of the plan. Maybe my plan is to see them once a week, but I'm not going to tell my coordinator, I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm going to sneak over there and see them 2 or 3 times a week and just not tell anybody about it. So again, these are some big no-nos. Please do not ever give out your personal cell phone number, your personal address, personal email. Always give them the Brookdale Hospice office information. Do not promise that you'll extend personal favors outside of the bounds of your plan of care. Do not engage in a relationship outside of this professional one. Do not give the patient or the family member or their roommate a ride in your own personal vehicle. These are some of the major ones. So defining your role is probably the number one thing today I'd want you to get out of this presentation. Define your role. Be clear about what you can do and what you can't do. And if you're not clear about that, then don't promise it. Say, you know what, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure if I can help you in that way, but if I can, I would sure like to. Be aware, be in tune to yourself. Whose needs am I meeting here in this moment? What would someone else say about this encounter if they were watching me? And always look to take care of yourself in this process. Please review this module. Please review the other policies and procedures that are given to you as a hospice volunteer. It's for your own benefit. We want you to thrive. We want you to be excited to serve and to be with these people. I'll leave you on this note. Hospice care is intimate, emotional, life-taking, and life-giving. At all times, a mix of competing goals, and yet it's the best journey we could possibly take with someone. Thank you so much for your time and on your journey to volunteering.